If you saw my last video and then you saw the thumbnail for this video, you're probably like, damn it, why does this guy keep popping up in my feed? I want to see YouTube videos about people who appreciate Wheel of Time. Well, I guess I didn't make this clear enough, but in that last video, and then the one I did after that, I enjoy the Wheel of Time series. Honestly, I had never heard of it up until a few months ago. I'd obviously heard it mentioned before, but listen, all of that aside, please, I'm going to be doing a bit of a response to some comments, some of the most upvoted comments from that video, and also going to be explaining some other things. If you enjoy these kinds of videos and you're a fan of the A Song of Ice and Fire universe and the Wheel of Time universe, obviously the up-and-coming House of the Dragon series, then make sure you subscribe and turn your notification on. Now, to start out with, some of these comments aren't necessarily the most upvoted. It's just they happen to be the version of the comment that I screenshotted, but the question is repeated a lot, so I just wanted to address it. But this one is from Influential Videos, and they say, do people realize that the books were written before Game of Thrones? So if anyone says it stole stuff from GOT is completely wrong. If anything, GOT took some ideas from Wheel of Time, such as the Game of Houses in Wheel of Time, and used it in A Song of Ice and Fire. So basically, this commenter is saying what a lot of other people were saying in the comment section on that video. Speaking of which, if you haven't seen it, check the link down below in the description and go and watch that. Obviously, this video doesn't really make any sense if you haven't. But, like, to be fair, if you haven't, like, if you're, like, the type of books that you read are just fantasy books and you don't really look into history, you don't read any history books, which, to be fair, they're pretty boring. Historical fiction is the shit, but just straight history books are boring as fuck, so I like documentaries in particular. But if you don't look into any of that and you just read fantasy, then I could see why you would comment something like that. You call it the Game of Houses or whatever, but really, it's English history, specifically European history, right? So northern, northwestern, whatever part of Europe you want to call that, but that is what George R. Martin bases his story off of. As a matter of fact, he's taken from so many different places in history, you can no longer call it plagiarizing. Because honestly, when you start to really look into it, like Zoroastrianism, which honestly I've heard that's used in Wheel of Time too, but just my basis is in A Song of Ice and Fire. So when someone says something like this, I think I've looked at most of Martin's influences. And there's no, like, interview specifically that he's given where he hasn't mentioned that he hates Robert Jordan or that he, I guess, likes him or whatever. You assume he does. He definitely has mentioned that he's been influenced by him before, but the Game of Houses in particular, to what that commenter was talking about, I just want to say, no, that's English history. Northwestern European history is where Martin took that from. He didn't take that from Wheel of Time. If anything, I think Robert Jordan and George R. Martin have a conversation. There's, like, I read this in an article. They had a conversation back in the day when George was first writing A Song of Ice and Fire, and Robert Jordan told George, hey, don't get into that trope of only writing 3 fantasy books, because back then that was the common thing that writers were doing, and Robert Jordan told George not to do that. So if you want to say influenced him that way, you can. But the thematical elements that are in Wheel of Time, I guess the first 3 books, like, a lot of people say that, you know, it's 20 books, by the way. That's another thing, too. So it's 20 books. What's been published of A Song of Ice and Fire for the main series is only 5. There's obviously 2 more coming, right? Winds of Winter is going to be the next one, probably released next year. But there's been 20, and it was finished by someone else, but there's 20 books, and they sold 90 million copies worldwide. Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, there's been 5. They sold 90 million copies with 5 books. Wheel of Time with 20. Now, I'm not saying stats and math matter, but if you want to say which fantasy series is better, compare it, right? But let's get back on track here, because like I said, I enjoy Wheel of Time. I'm starting to read the books. I'm like 37 pages into Eye of the World. Yeah, I'm looking at it on my phone. It's not the same as holding the book, but to be honest, after reading A Song of Ice and Fire multiple times, after reading Tyrion's POV chapters alone 4 times, right? it slogs. I know it gets better, but if I have to get through 3 books for something to get better, come the fuck on. So just wrapping up my response to that question, to be completely honest, I do think you have some points because, like I mentioned, Robert Jordan has influenced Martin and to tell him to, hey, tell your story all out. Don't get caught up in just 3 books, right? Because that's the Lord of the Rings fantasy and all the fantasy books before then. Or they're just kind of getting caught up in that you only need 3 books to tell a story. And then, like, obviously George knew from his love of Lord of the Rings that some of the things that Tolkien did the best, George wanted to expand upon in his world, and that's world building. So if you look at a map from a Tolkien universe, it's detailed, yes, it expands the world a bit, and if you want to look into a certain area that the characters are in, it's nice to have images to go along with it. I don't know if you've ever seen... And I guess my whole point in wrapping this up is Lord of the Rings is honestly what inspired both of them. George R. Martin did not take from Wheel of Time, other than being directly influenced by the author to make his world bigger. I have a book over there that has it's just 5 pages of maps of how massive Martin's world is, right? So, like, I don't know. Moving on to the next comment. This one's from Cherie Mitchell, and they say, I have not read the books, so like you, I am coming in clean. I need to watch it again to make up my mind, but I will continue to watch it for now. And it's pretty obvious why I chose that comment. That is my exact feeling summarized. I've never read the books. I've looked into the world quite a bit. There's a few characters... or one character that got leaked that I want to talk about in particular that I kind of looked up a little bit of back information on, and I think they're going to be making an appearance in the next episode, maybe in episode 5. Like I said, I'm going to review those. Pretty much at this point, when this video drops, if you're seeing it, my review for episode 4 will be out after I see it in my time zone, which I think is at 7 p.m. or something at night. I don't know. But I feel like they could have done a better job of telling this story, right? There's 20 books. That was kind of what I was getting at earlier. It was rushed. There was rumors that since the showrunner wanted to do 10 episodes, having 2 episodes rushed the plot of the first episode. Like I said multiple times, I was lost. I couldn't tell the difference between locations. None of the characters' names stuck. I don't know if it's because of the writing and the characters' names weren't repeated enough, but they just weren't honestly that memorable. A couple of people on the White Cloak subreddit made really good points about the shaky camera angles and the awkward closeness. It felt weird. It felt like someone who hadn't had that much experience was allowed to showrun something that was claimed to be massive, right? So they're heralding this crazy big project, and I don't know if they have the most experienced people doing that, right? But I don't know anything about that. That's just my opinion, and that's what I say here on YouTube. I am the you in that person, in that case. And then the next comment, this is from Bob Parkhurst from Tegrity Farms. They say, I'm halfway through the first episode, and I'm already mad at the show for butchering the story. I won't want to spend too much time on this, but that's kind of what I was just saying. They skipped. It seems as though there was so much that was skipped out. It's kind of hard to, really follow along if either you've read the source material and you expect something that really isn't happening or isn't there, or if you're like me and you're the average show watcher and you're just watching something new because you're a massive fan of Game of Thrones and this show was literally said to be by multiple people in charge of the show that it was going to be the next Game of Thrones. So if people are mad that I'm comparing it to it, which I have some responses coming up, or questions coming up, I guess that I'm responding, comments. But yeah, so the next one is from Franklin Oliveria, and they said, let's not compare this show with Game of Thrones, but it'll never be as good as Game of Thrones. Same as, I'll not compare it to GOT, but I'll summary compare it to GOT. Also, this series, at least the books, is way better than GOT. The story arc, character development, and ambient is way better, but I think they meant ambiance, but to each their own. Exactly. I like the last part of that. I don't agree that it's better than Game of Thrones. In fact, I don't. From what I've read, and to be fair, I haven't read enough, but from what I have read, if it takes me 3 books to get into the story, that's not good. That's not good signs. And maybe, like I said, people that think that George stole from that guy, and that's why they don't want to read the A Song of Ice and Fire universe books or whatever, look into actual history and realize that's what mostly influenced that story, right? So you'll hear medieval knights fighting dragons, right? And there's like some king that uses that on their heraldry or whatever. That's kind of like what A Song of Ice and Fire is. It's dark, it's gritty. And I can actually understand how watching something like that, if you're a fan of Wheel of Time, because that's basically a carbon copy of Lord of the Rings, right? Orcs, the Dark One, Sauron, that's literally what this is. It's crazy that Amazon is running both of those properties at the same time. But I feel like I kind of already responded to that. So one of the last questions that I want to get to in this, we'll do one more after this. This is from Deludin Spearman, and they say, laugh my ass off. I call him Roose Bolton and everything, too. I was like, Roose Bolton tried to shoot Wonder Woman. Exactly. Really, I wanted to comment to the person that responded to that, and that's Reinhold TV, and they said, how disrespectful to the actor. Seriously. Really? You think it's disrespectful to the actor to say that they gave such a memorable performance for the multiple seasons of Game of Thrones that they were in? Like, seriously, they were in the red fucking Reading. I don't know if you know who Roose Bolton is, but he's always going to be known as that. That'd be like getting mad at Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, watching any of their movies after that and being like, not thinking that's who that is, right? No, like that's the iconicness of who Roose Bolton is. I totally disagree with that. I actually think it's a compliment to the actor to say that. And then one of the last couple of things I wanted to say for this video. All right, now I kind of touched on this in my the very first Wheel of Time video that I made, because I think looked into it a little bit more. Emansfield, the Two Rivers, that place, right? Regardless of whatever race you want to make it to in your adaptation, showrunner person of Wheel of Time, it doesn't matter. But I think what is most important to stay true to the source material, which is really important these days, unless the source material, what you're trying to say, truthful to, allows for loose interpretations, like a lot of what's coming up in the Fire and Blood series, House of the Dragon, because it's basically written like a history book. There are some POVs, but not really, right? So you kind of get to loosely adapt stuff, but it's in a pre-existing universe. So I think that's a problem with Wheel of Time. Maybe if it was coming in as a second iteration of something, right? So it's basically setting its own rules for itself. Right, so the importance of staying true to the adaptation, right? So whatever race you want to make those people, they should mostly be consistently the same race, because the importance of those types of people, which I guess they got the fuck out of there quickly, right? They left Two Rivers, they left Emansfield quickly, so it doesn't really matter. I'm assuming we're going to hear about them and go back to that village at some point. But the importance to stay true to the adaptation is that they're basically, what I keep seeing is that they're backwater mountain hillbilly types of people. This is why they're untrusting of Moraine when she first arrives in the village, and this is also why certain characters look certain ways. So if you wanted to make them different races, it's completely fine. There's been a lack of diversity in fantasy. You just have to do it the right way where it doesn't seem like you're pandering, right? I feel like that was the biggest problem. And I don't have a problem with it. I don't give a shit because I haven't read the book really at all. 17 pages, 13 pages, whatever, it doesn't count. So it doesn't bother me necessarily that they changed that, but I think it's important to get that change across, because most people just go, that's racist, I'm not going to deal, I'm not going to read about that. No, it's important. So that way what people are, what really to more better understand this story and realize that maybe this adaptation won't be the most faithful. And even though Amazon keeps saying it's getting more seasons, maybe it's just not worth. I mean, I don't know. We're going to see when it comes out. Like I said, I'm going to obviously continue to review it. But moving past the Two Rivers thing, I just honestly thought this was really funny. So I go on Reddit/White Cloaks, because it's basically a sub that was made from the main Wheel of Time sub. And I thought the main Wheel of Time sub was weird. It's like Reddit/WOT or some shit, because every single post has literally, when it's post for hours up, it may have like 1,000 upvotes, 500 upvotes, 200 upvotes, but all the comments are all downvoted. Even though they're saying positive things about the show, they're all downvoted. So that made me like, oh, okay, I've experienced this before on Reddit. Moderators get in positions of power, and they're basically YouTube commenters and Reddit commenters. And when they do that, they make the Reddit feed look how the fuck they want it to. And when they do that, it's very obvious. You can see what types of posts get posts on there, and it's only shit that's saying the good things. So I'm like, I've seen some negative comments. This can't be the only subreddit. That's when I found Reddit/White Cloaks, and I specifically saw the image of this character named Loiel, who sounds basically like an ogre. So this is someone who will be making an appearance, and I'm not even going to show the image. I just thought it was really funny, and I guess I could show what they looked like. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny. Maybe staying true with the adaptation doesn't really matter again at that part, but it'll be interesting to see what sort of creative liberties this showrunner takes. If you enjoyed this video, leave me a comment down below. I know I rambled a bunch, but it's also like 3 in the morning. Thank you for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews. Long night. And if you're wondering what that is, that's a common turn of phrase in the A Song of Ice and Fire universe. It's basically when a long winter comes and the main characters have to prepare for that. The House Stark's famous words are, "Winter is coming," and the long night is basically winter. So like I just said, long night!